What do you mean? There's lots of people here.
No, I know, but
No, stay. Teach from over here.
We don't know what the plan is, so you can.
Yeah, no. Well, you're all sitting right here, so you might as well just stay there. I just. Yeah, she can take that chair because She can take that chair because I'm.
Look, you get a real chair.
I'm gonna stand over here.
There's another chair over here.
This will be this. Yeah, Stacy texted me that they're joining online, so.
Oh, so they can sit there. Okay.
Yeah.
They turn.
You can turn if you want. It doesn't matter. It's all good. Or it makes you happy. You know, Delvin's working. Renee's sick. I'm not sure where Clark and Bev are.
They're, I think, in Minnesota.
Oh, are they? Oh.
Marie was gonna try to come. Never know.
What do you mean? You mean this the one who's hiding over there on the bench? She came in while we were praying. She's a sneaky doctor.
I heard snoring during the prayer.
Yeah, she's sneaky doctor. So,
Nice.
yeah, okay. Well, this is fun. I mean, this will be probably a pretty short Bible study tonight because I'm pretty. Yeah, it was a long day and
A lot of driving too.
a lot of driving and yeah, that lacked any sort of fun. So, you know, Dan knows exactly what I'm talking about because he kind of just went through this.
Yeah, I did.
So, you know, that was pretty much what was that? Was that last year? That was January, right? I couldn't remember if it was Christmas time or right after.
Last year, but he passed away.
All right, yeah. So you know, you've been there. So anyway, so this will be fun because Dan disagrees with me on this point, so he can fight with me tonight. So this will be good. You know, you're right. There you go. So have you ever seen like your pastor and the regional minister wrestle? So
Words only, hopefully.
theological. Oh.
Words only.
that's okay. We'll sit.
Right. Oh, okay.
They
Well,
usually
he's-
look much better. So no, we like
No,
So-
we haven't.
Right. So you want to.
How much does it cost
No.
to see that?
Right. We just talked on Sunday how disagreement should not lead to division,
Oh,
which I preached a whole sermon on this. So,
but it's not dividing anybody. We're all behind
well, you know,
you.
but anyway, so just to catch those who haven't been here, just real quick up to speed. We started in January talking about some end time stuff, and then we took a break for the summer, and then we came back and had a big review, and so now we're picking up some of those themes a little bit. And the point we're at right now is tonight's sheet here is talking just about now. I've been talking through. We've been working using Matthew 24 and 25 as our base text, and I've been teaching through why I think that it teaches, for lack of a better term, the pre-wrath idea of the rapture. You know, that not pre-trib, but not post-trib either, and somewhere past the middle, but not at the end, which is because of Marv Rosenthal's book has become to be called the pre-wrath version. It's really just it's a modified mid-trib version if you think about it. But you remember a lot from seminary when we all went through, and I was probably a pre-tribber all my life until I got really digging into it. No, until I got digging into the truth of what Jesus said. So anyway, but one of the big arguments against the pre-wrath version, and kind of why it's called the pre-wrath version, has to do with this idea, which is a very biblical idea, that the Bible teaches that God's people will not be here, will not suffer his wrath in the end times. Okay? And one thing for sure that pre-wrath, mid-trib, and pre-trib all agree on is that God's people will not suffer his wrath in the end times. Now the post-tribbers just they seem to toss that out and figure you're going to get all the wrath. And I've never fully understood that, but I'll be honest, I haven't really dug into their exact thoughts on that.
The wrath doesn't really fully display until the eternal state.
Okay. So they're equating the wrath with yeah. So there you go. But anyway, but the other views on the rapture all would agree. We'd all agree we're not going to suffer God's wrath because there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. We're not appointed, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Is how does that fit? If you decide that you agree with the pre-wrath version, you have to say, well, okay, so how does that fit? Because you have to answer that question. Where does the wrath fit with the? So this comes from 1 Thessalonians 5:1-10, where it says, concerning the times and the seasons, you have no need to have anything written, for you yourselves are fully aware that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. When people are saying there's peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them, as labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you are not in darkness, brothers, for that day to surprise you like a thief. For you are all children of light, children of the day, not the night of the darkness. So then let us not sleep as others do. Let us keep awake, be sober. For those who sleep at night, those who get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let's be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love, and for a helmet of the hope of salvation. For God has not destined us for wrath, but to obtain salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, that whether we are awake or asleep, we might live with him. There I've highlighted, this God has not destined us for wrath. This is the main passage that we go to say, look, God isn't. We're not destined for wrath. We're not going to suffer the wrath of God, not in an eternal sense, right? Because we're not destined for the lake of fire. We're also not going to suffer wrath in even a temporal sense, ultimately. And so in the pre-wrath version, I have a little chart here I stole from Rosenthal's book because it was easier than trying to reproduce it in PowerPoint and make my own picture. Sometimes that's just too hard. Right? No, I have properly cited the source. Unlike apparently, I keep reading these stories of pastors plagiarizing like entire sections of sermons or entire sermons, and I'm like,
Seen it, heard it. Yep.
it's like, bro, it's not right. It's not right to take other people's stuff. No, you can attribute somebody and say, hey, I'd like to read this to you. That's one thing. But to just steal people's stuff, not anyway. Okay. So on our little chart here, he kind of divides up for us in the pre-wrath view that the seals, which we've already talked through, are the idea of man's wrath through the Antichrist, the war to come, the pestilence, the famines, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and then it is when we get to the trumpets and the bowls that you have God's wrath. So he kind of divides it out here in his chart. You got this beginning of sorrows for 3.5 years, and then you come into the great tribulation. So you also notice that if you study this a lot in the pre-trib view, the chart up until you get to the day of the Lord part pretty much is the same as what any pre-trib person would hold to also. It's the same idea going through there. That you have a 3.5 year period. It's divided by that midpoint. What divides that midpoint? Does anybody remember? Right, the death's abomination in the temple. You see the abomination in the in right the covenant. Yeah, and in the middle you have this. There must be. We talked about how there has to be a temple rebuilt because there's sacrifice and that sort of thing. And then sometime in the middle, the Antichrist breaks this covenant with Israel, abomination in the temple, and that's the midpoint, and that kind of begins this period Jesus calls the Great Tribulation, where things get pretty ugly. Okay, and so then if you'll notice that in the pre-wrath view, somewhere in the midst there, and I'm going to argue that when you get to the trumpets and bowls there, that's not to scale time-wise because it's hard to really know exactly how much time that's going to be. But somewhere somewhere as you progress in the Great Tribulation, God's wrath begins. That's where the rapture is, there with our fun little arrows, which is what begins the day of the Lord. And then the day of the Lord is the beginning of God's wrath being poured out with the trumpets, and then the bowls, okay, at that very end. And he equates that with Daniel 12:11, which we haven't gotten to yet. So if you're looking at that and going, what? We haven't gotten that far. So, and so that comes in to the end there, the bowls of wrath. And so in this view, then, you have the rapture takes place before the trumpets and bowls, which bring about the wrath of God. And the idea, of course, fits pretty well with the idea of the trumpet sounding. We walked through that chart of the various sounding of the trumpets line up with the idea there of the rapture. I know that was last spring. So I'm asking a lot, I realize, because you guys don't live in this every week, like I do. So I know I'm asking a lot. Okay, so that's kind of an overview of where we're coming from. So our answer to the destined for wrath is exactly, in one sense, the same as the pre-tribulation person would be. Yeah, we're definitely not going to suffer wrath, but it's because the wrath doesn't start till the day of the Lord, which starts one of the events at the beginning with the day of the Lord is the rapture. So then we're gone for this period of wrath. Okay, does that make sense up to this point? Clear as mud?
As long as we're gone.
Right, because this is a really important point, because any view in my mind that doesn't have us gone when the wrath of God is poured out on the nations, to me seems it has to be wrong, because
It seems to be contradicting God's promise.
right, because God's promises I'm not going to have to suffer his wrath in any way, shape, or form. Other than if you think of, if I do something stupid and sinful and I suffer the consequences, some go, God poured his wrath out on me. Well, really, you just suffered because you did something wrong and you're dumb. But anyway, natural consequence of sin, exactly. But I've heard that. I mean, see, it's God's wrath on these people because they did that. It's like, well, maybe. Probably more likely that natural consequences of sin.
For the day of the Lord is the day that he's coming back. That's the only time he's coming back. And then he's here.
Right. Then he comes and brings God's wrath.
Right.
Okay. And so, that's why I've connected this to when does God's wrath come there? Revelation 6, 12 through 17. He opened the sixth seal, and look, behold, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth. The full moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth as a fig tree sheds its winter fruit when shaken by a gale, which we can identify with tonight. Got it today. Sky vanished like a scroll that's being rolled up. Every mountain and island was removed from its place, and the kings of the earth, and the great ones, and the generals, and the rich and the powerful, and everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains, calling for the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who's seated on the throne, from the wrath of the Lamb, who is obviously Jesus, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who can stand? Okay, so here is the first time in Revelation where it's directly saying his wrath has come. And it comes at the end of the trumpets, which of course we know the thing that's going to, or end of the seals. Or I always have to do that. It's not those kind of seals. Right. It's not, you know what else it's not? It's not Easter seals. Does anybody remember those? Easter seals? Okay. Okay. That the day of wrath has come, and then what follows after this then is going to be, you open the seventh seal, what do you get? The trumpets. And when the trumpets come to the end, what do you get? The bowls. And it's all God's wrath being poured out on mankind. Okay.
People are actually going to be hiding caves and stuff.
I would assume it'll be bad. Remember that I take a very Mid-East centric view. In other words, the majority of the action happens in the Middle East, which doesn't mean it doesn't affect the whole world, because we're going to have those passages about, a quarter of all the people did there, a third of the waters were destroyed, and that sort of thing. But yeah, and it's written 2,000 years ago. But yeah, or there's plenty still caves. Yeah. I mean, the point is, it's going to be bad enough that people are going to run to the hills and hide and be scared, and and
you won't have to deal with that part.
And it strikes me, right? And it strikes me that they are very aware of where it's coming from, right? Yeah, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who's seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb.
Sorry.
No, yeah.
Whatever, but just the idea that, I mean, this is the first time I thought about the sky vanishing. It's like, people made the joke, well, we've been into outer space, we didn't see God. I mean,
Oh,
maybe it's gonna be gone. And we're gonna see God.
sort of like
Like a veil.
yeah, like at a Stephen Stoning kind of thing, right?
Well, I don't know about.
Oh, yeah.
Stephen
You know,
Stone.
where this he gets an opening in. Well, remember when Stephen's being
Oh,
stoned?
Stephen Stone,
he-
I've seen some author of some book. I'm like, Stephen
He's not
Stone.
talking
No.
about musical groups.
No,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're awesome.
And then the sky opened up. Yeah, no,
In
no.
Acts, when
Right,
Stephen was
right.
stoned,
What happens?
okay.
Right, the sky, and he sees
Yeah, yeah.
God on the throne
So
and
if
Jesus
that's-
standing.
if that's as obvious as it's gonna be, that, we're used to having a sky between us.
Well, and of course, again, I'm going to argue from my presupposition here that one of the things when Jesus comes and the rapture takes place and stuff, it's going to be visible, right? It's not secret.
The whole
See,
earth is gonna see.
right, right, and so they're going to know what's happening. So you have the sky roll back, Jesus descend, they see him. This is one of the problems I always had with the Left Behind movies, was because the rapture in those books and movies was like a secret rapture.
Right.
But the rapture doesn't seem to be a secret thing. It's loud and people know what's going on. You know what I
The
mean?
movies are always like, oh, it's a surprise, we can't figure it out.
Right. Yeah, they're all
There's
like,
no surprise here. They can figure it out.
Right.
It's God.
right. Exactly. I agree with you completely.
But I'm just
Yeah.
trying to understand what
But yeah, I exactly. And the idea of the sky, that makes perfect sense. That if they're going to see him who's seated on the throne and the wrath of the Lamb,
That's not the only reference in the Bible of looking up and seeing the heavens being open and actually being able to see through that.
yeah, that veil that's there. Right. So, because I mean, we tend to, yeah, people, oh yeah, we went to space and didn't see heaven or whatever, because they're thinking of heaven as just, it's just really far out there, not as, it's not in this same temporal space. It's like, have you ever heard, you guys have been around a long time. You've been around a long time. Well, have you ever heard the pre?
He's not going to let you see it unless you see
Right.
God.
I heard a preacher one time when I was in Pennsylvania talking about he held the view, which I did not realize was at one time a widely held view, that hell is in the center of the earth, is inside the earth. That the reason the core is hot and that's actually Abraham, the opposite of Abraham's bosom. Luke 16. It's not really the lake of fire because that hasn't come yet. But yeah, that the dead right now that are not in Christ are literally inside the center of the earth, and that if you could drill down far enough, you'd see it. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. He was really. This was the same guy who said that the Ark of the Covenant is under the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and that actually archaeologists.
Listen to a guy who said he saw it.
Okay, it was probably the same guy. So there you go.
I had
No
a
reason I shouldn't believe him, right?
Right.
professor at faith who, and he admitted this was his own kind of, imagination. It just felt like beings that aren't human vibrate at a different frequency. And so if you have the right equipment, you'd be able to see them. He's like, okay. But that was his explanation. So that
That's
somehow, that somehow we will be able to see God. It's like God is God. We know God is
Oh,
actually there.
yeah.
We just can't see him because
Oh, that's
he
interesting.
exists in a different whatever.
Yeah, actually, that probably is pretty close to what I believe.
Oh, yeah? So angels
I
use a
would-
different frequency.
Well, I wouldn't call it
You
a
have the right
frequency.
glasses on.
Okay, see, I wouldn't call it that. I would say that when God, possibly after the fall, that there's a spiritual world.
Yeah.
There's angels,
Oh,
there's
yeah,
demons,
oh, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
right? And that God has created a veil in such a way that you and I don't normally see the spiritual world.
Right.
Because if we did, that'd be very bad.
Maybe I have worse anxiety than I do now.
Okay, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. And that sometimes certain things that
We get a little glimpse.
right. So for example, sometimes when people have near-death experiences, right, and they see, and they can describe what happened in the operating room and stuff, and they look down. maybe that veil temporarily was parted and their soul was leaving their body and they saw what was going on, or they saw it, you know what I mean? I think there are certain substances that some people are involved with that cause that layer, that barrier to get thin. Things like ayahuasca and that sort of thing cause that barrier to get thin, and people see into the spirit realm, which would explain a lot of the weird voodoo type black magic and that sort of thing, which, if you notice, involves. So this is all getting recorded, so if you all think I'm crazy, it's okay. I understand. Which you notice often involves the use of hallucinogenic types of drugs, right? Okay, well, is it possible that those things break down that barrier enough so that those spirit beings can interact with us in a more direct way than they normally can? Because it's not just for our protection too. You know, we're protected from being constantly interacted, but because the nasty ones, obviously, we know from Jesus' own ministry, they really like to interact with humans when they can and cause all sorts of horrible things.
Indians have been smoking that for years.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is all just speculative.
Obviously, we as finite human beings are trying to figure out
Right.
what could happen. Thankfully, God is bigger than us.
I worked in like nursing.
Well, yeah, exactly.
The missionaries made the comment that the spirit realm is more active the more available we make ourselves to them.
You bet.
There you go.
So if you go to India where there is virtually no worship of the true God,
Yep.
and they have worship, I could spend the rest of the evening sharing stories that were told to me from firsthand experience that
Would freak us all out.
would freak us out and would probably not freak you out because you just wouldn't believe it.
Well, I
But
can tell
these-
you, I know someone who took PCP and LSD and talked to demons all the time.
Yeah.
And so whether it's, I don't think it just has to be drugs.
No, it can be all sorts. I mean,
And I would also argue that
She wasn't on drugs.
one of the biggest struggles we have with all of this is our material nature dominates everything about us.
Yeah.
And the spirit realm is extremely difficult for us to grasp.
right.
When you say material, you mean that we can touch it, feel it,
Physical,
see it.
yeah.
Yeah, we have such a
And the
strong
spiritual is
Western.
beyond being measured. And then
Yeah.
she was saying something.
I've worked in like nursing homes before, and there's a lot of times where when somebody's really close to the end, they'll, tell me like, well, did you see the man, that was sitting in here with me? I don't see anybody, and then maybe, on another hall, people that don't even talk to each other. Then when it's their time, they would ask me, did you just see the man that was just in here? And they're not scared of them, whoever this person is that they're seeing, or if they're, I mean, they don't know. I didn't
Yeah.
see anybody, but it's enough to kind of freak you out.
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, if you make yourself available to those spirits.
Well, and the spirit beings can choose to be where they wish to be.
Yeah.
Just like the angels appear when there's something for them to be doing, I do not think God has to give them special power to appear on that occasion. Most of the spiritual beings can appear deliberately, just like the angels that bred with the women originally that led to
The Genesis
flooding
6.
everything,
Mhm.
et cetera, that had to be stopped. So God precluded that from happening again. But those beings are able to show up when they wish to us. It's not just that we can't see them; they can
They can cross the barrier.
They can cross.
Yeah.
That barrier.
Whatever it is, I'm using that for lack of a better term.
Sure.
You know.
Our willingness as human beings to actually be accepting of that,
Yeah.
you know.
And those cultures like in India are much more accepting of that.
In our head, that's so far-fetched that
Right.
I don't believe it.
Right.
And unless you 100% fully believe it, you're not gonna see it.
So
So
yeah.
that's why when you're dead, you're present with God, and that's why you can see it then.
Yeah. No, I think you guys are making great points. I mean, that could be a whole Bible study in
It is
itself.
a whole, yeah.
Yeah. But I
You
mean,
don't want anybody to think you're crazy, so.
well, see, they've already decided that about me, so it's okay. Yeah, I've got all sorts of theories about all sorts of stuff like that. But that's not going to help us with trumpets and bowls. Okay.
Next.
So anyway, so all right. So our point one is that the trumpets and bowls relate to the wrath of God, as we see in Revelation 6, because that's what's going to come. The great wrath has come, and they know why it's coming. And so this is where the actual wrath of God starts, which then connects it to this is where we have to be gone. That the rapture would have to take place at that point, so that we're gone, so that we don't suffer the wrath at the end of that period of the seals. Okay. So that's the first argument. Both pre-trib and pre-wrath or mid-trib, whatever you want to call it, both agree we're not going to be here for the wrath. Okay, the pre-wrath position is that getting out takes place right before the wrath of God comes, which is right before the trumpets, right at the end of the seals, right before the trumpets, which happens somewhere past that midpoint of the tribulation period.
So we're not going to be in it for 7 years. We're going to
Right.
be in it for 3.5-ish years.
Yeah, 4 years, 4.5, whatever. Yeah, somewhere minimum 3.5 plus some more time.
That's why we need to be watching.
Right. Right. Okay.
And it'll be
Um,
hard to miss if you're there.
Right.
It's not
So-
like it's gonna be a small event.
Right. But this is an important point, is that back in the 1 Thessalonians 5 passage, which occurs right after 1 Thessalonians 4:13 through whatever it is, 18, that talks about the rapture. Okay. Which is actually the passage we get the word rapture from, because when it talks about being caught up in the air, in the Latin version of the scriptures, raptura is to be caught up. And so that's where we get rapture. So I always love it when the amillennialist folks are going, well, see, the word rapture doesn't even occur in the Bible. It's like, well, it depends. Have you ever read the Latin?
What language are you in?
Yeah, it does in the Latin. So what's that?
When was the last time you had your bowl?
Exactly. Well, so I crammed an entire 2 years of Latin into one summer in college. That was the worst summer of my life.
I'm reading from the Spanish because I want to force myself to do that.
Right.
This is arrebatados, which means rapture.
Rapture.
So Spanish
Yeah.
would say there's rapture.
Right. And of course, Spanish is based on Latin. So all those Romance languages.
Bueno.
The rolling of the R. I can't even roll my R's. So I don't know I'm not fooling anybody. Antonio Banderas, I'll never. Yeah, I know. I'm he has more hair than I do, though. So, okay. So another pre-trib argument, which is a very important argument, I think, is they will say, look, okay, there's no church in the book of Revelation from Revelation 4 through chapter 21. Okay. And you know what? They're right. Because they're not going to find talked about any Revelation 4 through 21. So that must mean they're gone completely during the trip, right? So it must be completely gone. Okay.
All bought farms out in Iowa.
Well, yeah, there you go. I wish. I just need a cabin.
Who just bought a farm, kind of feeling like the world's coming to an end.
I just need a cabin on a lake in the UP.
With how the government's been handling everything, I feel more and more like that every
We're all
Oh, yeah.
feeling just a little bit like, yeah.
I feel heavier and
Well,
anxious.
when your president is getting on the TV and talking about, I think this guy's going to nuke us, basically, it's like you're not inspiring confidence in your leadership or in the future, sir.
In the Bible, it doesn't mention anywhere about a nuclear holocaust before, so, I mean,
Yeah.
I find some sort of comfort in that.
Sure. Okay, so back to the little church. Okay. Now, it's good. Our Bible studies are kind of a free for all. I mean, sometimes we get off on some crazy rabbit trails, and that's what I like. Is I just like to talk about the Bible. I just like to talk about the Bible. You don't even have to agree with me. I just like to talk about the Bible. It's kind of more fun when people don't agree with me, and then we can really talk about it. So, but anyway, okay. Yeah. See,
Can I push back on your?
of course. You know what? Like I said in my sermon on Sunday, I can be wrong.
I would argue the point is not so much that they're not in chapters 4 to 21, but that they're in heaven. If you read the descriptions that Jesus gives the churches in chapters 2 and 3, that's the same description he gives in the 24 elders. Dressed in white, wearing crowns.
which is the normal pre-trib argument, right? Is that the elders represent the church in
And it's
in
more than
heaven.
just represents the way that the churches are described by Jesus in chapter 2 and 3
Mhm.
is the same very terms that he uses of the 24 elders who are in heaven.
Sure.
So he's talking to them as if they are already in heaven. It's-
Those
Mhm.
of us who would be pre-trib would make that argument.
Yes, and I don't think it's a bad argument. What we're those, so you've already admitted those scenes happen in heaven in Revelation 4 and 5.
Yep.
Okay. And then Revelation 6 is still happening from the heavenly viewpoint, right? You're seeing, right? Because he's already ascended, John is seeing into heaven and looking, and then these horses are going out, the 4 horsemen and all that, the trumpets. So it's still a heavenly scene.
I would look at it a little differently.
Okay.
I would argue the book of Revelation and the book of Jude are the 2 books that you get to see what's happening in heaven and at the same time what's happening on earth, and so you bounce back and forth.
Well, yeah. Oh no, I agree.
And so I would argue that yes.
Yeah, I
that
agree.
He's bouncing back and forth throughout chapters 4.
See, I guess I would say for me, I guess I'm thinking the bouncing actually starts like in chapter 7.
I guess I agree with one thing that you often say, once it's happened, we will know.
Well, yeah,
So
There
it
is
is,
that.
right.
I don't spend much time worrying about it, it's just if
Sure.
I wake up some morning and hear that they're rebuilding the temple, I'll know, well, it's probably not ahead of time when this starts.
Exactly.
It's probably.
It's a good point.
We're probably gonna make it through the first 3.5 years, so I better
Yeah.
start getting more ready. And otherwise, I'll say,
So you're saying the churches are in heaven at that point already?
That would be my argument, but I didn't mean to entirely dissuade
Isn't that
your
what you're
argument.
saying?
No, I think it's. I mean, I don't even disagree with you. I guess part of my argument would be that, first of all, I agree, because I was going to talk about the back and forth. Right? You're constantly getting this back and forth, and then also some of those events are, instead of being necessarily chronological, they're simultaneous.
yeah,
You're seeing some stuff in heaven. Well, at the same time, this is going on the earth, and that sort of thing. And so then when you get to Revelation chapter 7, which is the beginning of the trumpets, okay, and so I'd argue the beginning of the rapture happens just prior to that. You have the church taken into heaven at that point, and then after that, when all the wrath stuff happens, church isn't there anyway. The church, I mean, yeah, I know you're arguing for the elders. I'm going to argue that the elders are a separate thing.
Okay.
So, but I've never thought about that about Jude, though. That it also gives you that back and forth.
Job.
Or Job. You said Jude.
I meant Job. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I taught through Job a few years ago. So yeah, I love Job. Oh, okay, good. Because I was sitting there trying to think. I'm thinking through Jude, and I'm like, okay, well, we got him talking about the angels in the in darkened chains, and we got. Well, I mean, he does, right? That's why I was kind of, because I'm like thinking, well, yeah, okay, sort of, I guess.
It's a Freudian slip.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, Job, right. I mean, and you have things that are happening in Job, again, simultaneous, even though you're getting the 2 different views of what's happening there. And of course, Job doesn't know what's going on. Poor guy. But back to Dave's point, because you probably never heard my rules of interpreting prophecy. And everyone now in church knows rule number 1 is you cannot be sure how a prophecy is actually fulfilled till after it's fulfilled. You always know in hindsight exactly what's really happened.
I read it from Philip Yancey. I have a good friend who doesn't like Philip Yancey, and so it's actually an argument from the patristics, from the early church fathers, that the Pharisees spent their entire life studying the arrival of Jesus and got everything wrong.
Yeah.
Why should I think that I'm a better student than they?
Exactly.
And I come back to that often.
Yes.
We spend too much time trying to
Right.
draw pretty charts.
Yep. Yeah, we might be wrong about everything. Exactly. So.
where I grew up, they had all kinds of crazy ideas. They thought the Western world was gonna be the in places.
Oh yeah.
All these other places were the Antichrist and Babylon and stuff, and it was just insane what they had imagined and.
It was
Go, "Where did
that
you come up with
all
this?"
when I was in seminary, we were still kind of coming off the whole and all that kind of stuff and all the very America-centric everything. And, oh yeah, the same kind of stuff you're talking about, Dave. All that stuff. I mean, I grew up in the super hardcore dispensationalism that was like literally that you probably, where did you go to seminary at? Central. Okay.
Seminary in Minneapolis.
They,
Definitely dispensation.
right. I mean, like when I was in seminary, half the professors were the literal, like the 7 dispensations kind of dispensationalism, like super hard line, I mean,
I was just listening a while back, which kind of, post-millennial is a philosophy teaching that is pretty much rejected by everybody.
yep.
But America wouldn't exist without post-millennial. The whole
Right,
reason that the pilgrims came here was to bring the kingdom of God to earth.
Right.
The reason America exists is because of post-millennial.
Right.
And so the influence of
They
our
thought they were
eschatology, yes, they
Yeah.
came here to start the kingdom of God.
Right, because remember, millennialism teaches that how the kingdom comes is the church makes society better and better and better and better until finally everything is so perfect that Jesus comes. Which was actually, if you think about it, the same thing the Pharisees believed. That if, yeah, well, the Pharisees believed the same thing, that if everybody in Israel would just follow the law perfectly, the Messiah would come. And post-millennium is the same idea. And then World War I happened.
No, that cuts a lot.
But you're right. I never had heard the idea that the U.S. wouldn't exist, but it makes perfect sense when you say it just on its face, because that's exactly what.
And to me, it's a good reminder that our eschatology will drive what we do.
Oh yeah, right.
It's been that way a long time.
They were
Right.
escaping.
Never put that.
Well, that too, but
as well.
But they were coming here so that they could properly live out the kingdom of God. through Christ and the church.
right in the way they should.
Yeah, we were just talking about the kids, and they had said what we were studying that also, the pilgrims were concerned because they have to spend a holiday and their kids are acting more and more, taking on like, speaking,
Dutch.
and acting more like the Dutch kids, and they're afraid that they're losing.
And then when they started wearing wooden shoes, that was it. They got in a boat, and now look at we have Crocs. So
It's just big circle.
right, ultimate proof that postmillennialism cannot happen is Crocs.
So Stacy is watching and he's phoned a friend.
What's that?
He needs to relay this information.
Yeah.
So he said, what, maybe you're gonna get to, what swayed him from being pre-trib to pre-wrath was from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2.
Yeah, we haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay. He
So-
wanted you to have you
Bring
read
that
it.
up.
Yes, I'm going to read it.
It
So-
wasn't even on your list for tonight.
It's not on my list for tonight. It's one we're going to get to in a future Bible study. So can you tell him that?
Well, he knows he's listening.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to that one in a future Bible study. So it's coming. I just haven't gotten that far yet. So okay. So moving, yes, definitely moving on. The idea that Revelation, this was an argument that not only have I heard preached many times, that I myself used to agree with, and that is that in chapter 4, verse 1, when John is, after this I looked up and behold, a door standing open in heaven, and the first voice which I had heard speaking of the trumpet said, "Come up here," because there's the trumpet, right? Okay, so there's the connection, the trumpet. "Come up here, and I will show you what take place after this." And then everything after that is from the rapture on. The idea that John is like a microcosm of the rapture when he's told to come up here, and then this goes along. Then the people that I've heard, I'm not saying this is what Dan's ever said this, but the people that I've heard that go with the 24 elders are the church. I've heard that same idea in Revelation 4:1 from. Now I would say that's probably not a very good argument, because I don't see how you can equate John with the church as a whole, and so I don't buy that. But it's an argument you might hear, and so something you should know about. So I don't know what Dan thinks about that, but
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. so.
I have heard.
You've heard that though, right? That's a pretty common. I heard that in seminary. So
He was a mini rapture.
Yeah, exactly. It's a what's the word I'm looking for? Metaphor.
Right.
Yeah.
And the whole book of Revelation obviously is picturing future events.
Events anyway, right.
But yes,
Yeah.
I think the reality is we all come to our conclusions and then we backfill our conclusions with things that might.
Heck yeah.
Or might not actually.
That's right. Okay.
Maybe the trumpet is the right tone for your sound.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
It's-
So
Shadows.
go ahead, Dave.
I was gonna say, it's interesting that God can show different people what the future is before we consider it the future, just like he already knows the outcome of everything
Sure.
already. So time is not about, to us, it's incomprehensible that
Yeah.
he can just go, hey, you wanna see what's gonna happen? Here you go, this is it happening.
Yep.
Now then, but all this is gonna happen in between, and it's gonna look like this isn't gonna happen, because Satan is gonna try whatever, but this is,
No. But here it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
One of my profs in seminary, I remember talking about when he talking about the book of Revelation, made an argument that God was revealing things to John in ways that John could have a chance at comprehending and recording. And because of that, a lot of it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to us. But it made a lot more sense to him at the time
yeah,
than it necessarily does to us.
yeah.
You know,
John had to see things.
He had to see things in a way that
something to
make
John.
right, that would
Had
make
he
sense
told
to somebody.
something from now,
Yeah.
or whatever, it would have been,
If you would have showed me cars and skyscrapers and
Right,
masses, I'd have went back and killed myself.
right. You just,
See all that.
I mean, imagine what it would be like if somebody even from 1,000 years ago was suddenly transported to here,
yeah,
The shock.
crazy.
right? I mean,
When I was in India, I was talking about snow.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
They had never seen a picture of it and would not believe me that rain came as white flakes from the sky.
yeah,
They have a hard time when you tell
Absolutely
them that
couldn't
ice
believe
falls
that.
originally,
Yes.
and then it melts and
And
becomes
so,
rain.
it just really reminded me of how often God has to explain things that we have no basis.
yeah, to understand. Which and what's weird about that is to the southwest of India are the Himalayas. So it's not like they don't have the world's tallest mountains just to the south and west.
Correct.
But they
it also
don't have
speaks of their inability to travel.
right, exactly, the poverty and yeah,
They didn't have these things when I was there, and so
It's been a few years since.
it was the 90s. They had never even seen a picture of snow and couldn't really believe. They didn't believe me, and they thought I was making it up.
Oh,
I can believe that.
And I suspect a lot of people thought John was making it up, wrote it down.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and still do because they try to come up with all sorts of spiritualizations to not make it a future, a futurist thing. Hence, you've got N.T. Wright and all those sorts of folks that are amillennial, and it's just the whole thing is just cyclical history, or it's just whatever, so kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. Where are we at time wise here? Okay, I'm going to drop down to the Matthew 24 just because I just want to have this short discussion because it comes down to the idea of this can't know the exact time of the return. I think everybody would agree, no matter what their stance on the rapture, that Jesus makes it clear nobody can know the day or the hour, right? Can't know exactly when it's going to happen. Okay. Now, my argument is going to be that the pre-wrath view is a better argument for this than the pre-trib view. Now, why am I going to say that? Well, but
There's an option, there's something that we know happens at the pre-trib, so that
Exactly.
if something happens at the pre-trib, then
right, because
you're gonna
we
have an idea when.
if we agree that Daniel 9:27 teaches us that the signing of the covenant with Israel is what starts the clock, so to speak, of the tribulation period, then the rapture would have to happen pretty much right there and then. Dan, do you have an argument against that for me?
Why does the pre-tribulation have to begin the tribulation? I would argue there could be months or even a year from the time the rapture happens till the 7-year. That would be my argument.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It doesn't necessarily, that the tribulation.
So you're
covenant,
right.
the rapture can happen prior to that,
So that is sort of going with the Left Behind view, because that's how it happens in the Left Behind movies. Is the rapture happens first, and then that is what leads to the one world government, and then to the
Well, and that's why.
to the signing of the covenant with Israel.
I have to be honest, I've never read them.
Well, that's okay, and you know what? Your life is probably better for it, because even pre-trib folks will tell you, wow, do they get a lot of things just really goofy in there. And I don't think, I mean, it was written, well, but it was written for entertainment value too. It's not like I don't think,
I mean, it is the ultimate story.
right. And
All God's stories are, but we take everything else and we write all of our stories.
exactly. I was sitting talking with one of my kids one night. I think maybe it was Marissa. And I was talking about how many movies are really just the gospel. And she's like, well, what do you mean by that? I'm like, and we were watching Thor. And I said, Thor, this movie is Jesus. It's the story of Jesus. She's, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what has to happen? She's like, Thor comes to earth. Okay. Now in his case, he comes because he's unworthy, which obviously is not Jesus, but he has to come to earth. And what has to happen for him to prove himself worthy? He has to give himself up. He dies, and then he rises again, and he comes back as the hero and saves everybody. And she's like, I said, the entire Harry Potter series boils down to Harry has to die and come back to life. He's the Messiah. All these movies they're all the gospel. You know, I mean, Tolkien started something, and we want right. Our lives cry out for it, right? So in the post-trib version, in the post-trib view, which I don't know too many people that hold to a full post-tribulational rapture, you definitely know when the rapture is going to happen, because for sure you can count 7 years then, because you know it's going to happen at the end, you know. So, you know, and the other thing just being that we're told about these things to help us know when to be ready. If I'm going to be, and this for me, I think for me, Stacy was the 2 Thessalonians passage, which we'll get to in the next Bible study. For me, the thing that really has pushed me over, besides just seeing how what Jesus talks about in Matthew lines up in my mind with Revelation, is this idea that if I'm out of here prior to any of the end times events happening, then why are these constant admonitions for me to be ready and for me to persevere? You know, and I know one of the pre-trib arguments about that as well, that's actually for the people who are in that period. Which again, you know, that also makes sense. But for me, there's no reason for me to have to be ready in the sense of being ready to persevere through anything, because I'm gonna be gone. So there's no need to call me to persevere. Yeah, the kids are downstairs. Remember? Oh, weren't you here when I said I don't care what they break down there as long as they don't break themselves? It's very important that they don't break themselves. So what's that? She didn't hear that comment. Okay. All right. Okay. So it's 7:30, so we're pretty good for tonight, and I'm pretty spent for the day. So, you know. Yeah. Sounds good.
And we do this every 2 weeks.
Yeah, we do this every other Wednesday night, prayer meeting and Bible study. So, yeah, it's fun.
Speaking of the movie, you remember all the old Westerns? If you remember, the hero is usually killed way back at the beginning, or.
Right, they think he's killed.
And then,
Yeah.
And then comes back to.
Right.
He's only partly killed.
Only partly killed.
Well, I mean, it was the same.
Right. He's left. There's a lot of where he's left for dead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
exactly. See you guys. Take care. I'm turning this off. Right.
Getting